Welcome back to At the Mic with Michael Schumacher, brought to you by JR's Oasis. More than a fuel station, more than a convenience store. It is your one-stop travel shop on ESPN Radio, 101.5 FM, 1570 AM, KVTK, Vermilion, and Yankton. And we have a special kind of Bucks banter, kind of where are they now update with Drew Heithoff, who is doing some really fun things, cool things, and he's taking the time to talk with me today. Drew, I tell you what, for people that don't know you, kind of take a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your family, your background, and and we'll get into what you're doing, but just kind of give us that foundation if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Michael, thanks so much for having me on. It's awesome to catch up, to relive some old glory days at Yankton. Always fun to reminisce on the past for sure, and kind of give a little update of where I am now. But to do that, I mean, man, my road is kind of a winding one for sure. But background stuff from my life, I grew up essentially my whole life in Yankton. I was actually born out in California. As a kid, it was always, being from South Dakota, it was always way, quote unquote, cooler to be from California, which I found out later in my life in minor league baseball that Modesto, California actually is not that cool. But yeah, so grew up in Yankton pretty much our whole life from about 1 on. I've got my dad and my mom got divorced when I was about 3 and both remarried. So my dad, Roger, and Barb Heithoff, they're still in Yankton, live out by the lake. My mom and stepdad, Bill and Julie Holst, are still in Yankton as well. I've got one sister, Kendra, who's about a year and a half older than me. She is currently in St. Paul, Minnesota with her husband and their 3 kids. My mom's, I guess to be Bill's side, my stepbrothers, they're Andy, Ben, and Eric Holst. They all grew up in Yankton playing sports in the 90s. Honestly, probably helped shape some of my love and desire for sports, getting to watch them over at Crane Youngworth, running around as a kid for sure. And then I am married. My wife, Courtney, her and I, we have 2 kids, Wesley, who is 3, and Owen, who is 1.5, and we are out in Detroit, which, man, getting to Detroit has been a little bit of a journey for sure. On the career side, I obviously played pretty much all sports throughout high school, but primarily baseball and football, and made the decision I was going to try and do both in college, but ended up deciding to do baseball, went to Augie, played there, had a great 5 years, broke my wrist my sophomore year, so I got a medical red shirt, and we were pretty bad my first 2 years, actually, and then we kind of turned it around later on, and we joke that we've kind of created Augie baseball into what it is now with their national championship and their regionals and super regionals and tournament every year. And I don't remember what year it was, but we made the first regional in school history. So we joke that we've created Augie into what it is. Don't tell Tim Huber that because he will definitely not agree with us. But that was a great time in my life. Still have a ton of my really good friends from Augie that I'm super close with. But after that, it was kind of all over the place. I wanted to continue playing baseball, and I went to school for, it was technically exercise science, kinesiology, what people are calling strength and conditioning. And I knew that I still wanted to play, and I got an opportunity, indie ball, to play in the Frontier League in Chicago, which was awesome. But I also knew, like, hey, this is indie ball. This is a far cry from the MLB, so I got to also continue my career that I went to school for. So kind of simultaneously, I actually got an internship out in LA at UCLA. And so while I was out there for 6 months, I was actually also practicing during the middle of the day to prepare myself to play ball in Chicago. And it was literally 5 a.m. I'd ride the bike, $50 bike that I bought uphill all the way to the campus, do the full day of strength conditioning. Well, I guess technically went to half day to noon, would go eat lunch, ride over to the baseball facilities, which is like 1.5 miles away. And they were fortunate that they let me use their cages pretty much. So I was the kid that was in the cage, throwing the ball against the net to play catch, quote unquote, and then also using the old Iron Mike machine to get some batting practice. And then I'd ride my bike back to campus and finish out the rest of the day, finish by 6 or 7, and did that for about close to 6 months straight, which was pretty rough, but well worth it. Total culture shock for me, going from small town South Dakota kid to living in Los Angeles. Pretty wild, but a great experience. Left that internship, went out to Chicago, played the full summer out there in Schaumburg, Illinois. That was a ton of fun. Then came back to South Dakota and realized, like, hey, I got to start making a little bit of money. This is quote unquote adult life. And so I got a personal training job at a wellness center in Sioux Falls. Ended up the next year trying out with the Canaries, spent spring training with them, and was the last guy cut from that team. So it was like, all right, kind of realizing I probably need to get on the career path of strength conditioning. Worked for a couple years as a personal trainer, worked some youth athletes, had a great time. Then a buddy of mine from Augie actually had lived in Lincoln and was working as a strength coach down at a performance center down there, and he came back for a weekend and we caught up, and he was like, hey, we need another coach. Like, do you want to come down? And long story short, it's like, all right, cool. I'm moving to Lincoln. Moved to Lincoln, trained a lot more youth and like high school population down there, and a lot of general population people too. Being a big Husker fan, that was pretty fun for 2 years to just live the UNL life, but not be at UNL. So it was pretty fun. From there, I made another connection with a friend of his that the guy I was living with that told us about Exos down in Phoenix, which is a private performance facility. They have multiple locations, but their hub is in Arizona. And he had interned out there. He was actually training the NFL Combine group at the time, and he was like, you guys, if you want to do this professionally, you need to come down to Arizona and do this. So on a whim, we packed up everything we had and went down to Arizona and spent 6 months there. And, man, that internship probably altered my career as a strength coach in a really, really positive way. I learned a ton, had a ton of great hands-on experience with really high-level athletes from all different sports, also Gen Pop people. It literally was everything from NFL, MLB, NBA to ping pong players and Australian football, and it was wild. So I got a ton of really good experience, networked through them, met with the San Diego Padres, got my job in minor league baseball, which was the cherry on top for me because I never thought I was going to just pigeonhole myself into, I want to work with baseball. But it worked out really well, and I worked my way up just like a player would. Started in rookie ball first year, low A the second year in Fort Wayne, Indiana, high A the third year, Lake Elsinore, California. Then I went to double A in San Antonio, Texas. Following summer, spent another year in double A, but we had moved affiliates to Amarillo, Texas. And after that, got promoted to our assistant coordinator position, which is based out of Arizona at our spring training complex, helping oversee all of our staff, but then primarily my group that I worked with was our rehab players. Did that for 2 years. Then my wife and I actually were expecting our first kid, and baseball is just crazy hours all the time, even if you're based out of Arizona. And we were looking for a little more stability, and then Exos, full circle, comes back out of nowhere and reached out to me about a potential full-time coaching job that they had there. It made a ton of sense for us at the time. It was tough to leave baseball and a little worrisome just because you never know. You don't want to get blackballed. You don't want to leave for no good reason. But made that decision. Spent 2 years coaching tons of groups there again. Primary group was the Major League Baseball group in the off season, and we had some really big name players that came through there, which was great because I essentially was still working in baseball without the hours that are baseball. And then to kind of wrap it up, it's kind of long-winded, like I said, all over the place, but the Detroit Tigers, I had a buddy of mine reach out that said, hey, are you still looking to get back into baseball? If so, I know a team that's looking for a major league coach. And in my head, I'm like, this is a good spot. Like, I'm never not going to have a conversation with somebody. At the very least, I'll network. It's like, who's the team? He goes, the Detroit Tigers. And my first thought, like probably everybody else's thought, was, oh, man, Detroit? Like, that's not ideal. Like, the city, you hear all the things. The team had, historically, the last 10 years been very bad. And I'm like, I'll talk to them. Ended up having really good conversations. Our our medical team, our performance team, the sports science team, like all is really, really, really good, and they were moving things in the right direction. So the goal being to get to the major leagues, I was like, man, I don't know if I'll ever get this chance again. So ended up interviewing, getting the position, and last year was my first year there, or here, I should say, and we're out on the West Coast right now, that's why I say there. But last year was the first year. This year, year number 2, we had an incredible run at the end of last year, which made it a ton of fun. Playoffs were awesome, and we're doing pretty well this year so far. We still got a decent amount of games left, but we're hoping to keep the boys go in the right direction and make a nice run in the playoffs this year too. So big, long-winded answer of kind of all over the place, but that's sort of the history of me.
Well, that is amazing. And so, we talked a little bit off air about the journey and stuff, and, that your love of sports kind of led into, there obviously crossover on that Venn diagram. But, I was going to ask, how important is that love of sports, at least that involvement? Because obviously somebody can know the mechanics of strength training and performance and stuff like that. They can know what it is. But how beneficial has it been to have been a player to now work with players to even understand their mindset?
It's huge, truly. I can create so much more buy-in with my players, the guys, even though I haven't been through the grind of the quote-unquote minor league season, right, major league season as a player. I did play indie ball, which was, I think, close to 80 games, right? I did play all my life. So just having that, and they don't realize that, they being the players, they don't understand that right away until all of a sudden it is, hey, this guy needs to play catch. Like, there's nobody else to play catch him who can. And I'm like, oh, I got it. And I'll just throw, and they're like, oh, okay, he actually knows what he's doing. And then that slowly builds your buy-in. Next thing you know, they're like, man, my hip's tight. Like, what do I do? And then I come in, boom, and I give them corrective exercise or like I have my massage therapy license now, so I can actually do manipulation of tissue in that way. And all of a sudden, you're in, and you've got their eye and you got their ear, and you can get them to do things a little bit easier than, say, this isn't my words, the quote-unquote nerds behind the computers talking about all the stats and the numbers and the exit veloads and spin rates and yada, yada. So it's definitely a huge advantage in that. And it just makes it more fun for me because I can, understand the game in depth a little bit more too.
Well, and that has to be such a benefit. To obviously players, these are, you deal with multi-million-dollar athletes. You're going to deal with somebody that's that pretty much general baseball fans and even some know, like a Tariq Skubal. Then you're going to deal with players that are getting a cup of coffee, and each one obviously has their own mindset. How does that work? Obviously, everybody, you have to kind of know them to a certain point and build those relationships. They have to trust you, but you have to understand how those buttons and levers get pushed, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you some clear transparency on when I first learned that there are players that are important and there are players that are not, quote unquote, in the eyes of the front office. I was in low A at the time, and I won't use any names or anything, but we had a high-profile player there, and one of a front office person straight up said to me at one point, it's like, I need you to watch this guy and this guy only the most when you are training them. Because at that point in the minor leagues, we had to go to a local gym to train because we didn't have an actual facility at the field. And he's like, I don't care. I think he said, I don't care about these other guys right now. I want you to focus on him. And I was like, oh, man, that was actually kind of hard for me and a big turning point in my realization of what the business is in baseball. Because I am and I was that underdog guy, right? The undersized guy from the small town that knows he can play and knows he can compete really well, but there are rules. There just are. There's a money attached to these guys. So that is a very real thing, and I think a lot of people don't understand. And I'm not saying that we look at anyone more or less than anyone else, but there are definitely some little hoops you have to jump through and give a little, more attention to detail on specific things as you're presenting it to the right people. But day to day, man, our team is really young too. So it actually is a little bit of a unique situation. At least it was until the trade deadline. We got a few more older guys, but they're very, very, very happy and willing to get in the weight room and do what we say because of the trust and the the relationships we've built and I've built over the last 2 years now. But yeah, there's definitely some hoops you have to jump through to get guys to do stuff too. Some of the big name players, they get the stigma like, oh, they don't do anything. And to a degree, there are some guys like that. But I'd say overall, like, we've got a really strong group of guys, and they trust in what we're doing, and they know that we have their best intentions front of mind.
Well, and obviously you're kind of focused on that, but as a baseball player, former player, you love seeing the product on the field, and you guys are enjoying a pretty darn good season. I think exceeding expectations. How fun has this ride been?
Man, it's been so much fun. We, at the trade deadline last year, if anyone that's listening follows baseball and knows anything about the Tigers, we sold. We got rid of all of our short contract guys, and it was a rebuild. And all of a sudden, I talked to our other strength coach that works with me, my coworker, and we were both like, man, this is going to be a super long second half. Because we were like hovering just below 500, playing decent, playing bad, and like big stretches of each. And then all of a sudden, after about August, I think it was 18th or so, we just started playing really, really well. And it was like, who are we? we don't know what we're doing, but this is incredible. And you go through that whole grind of a year, and you finish the way we finished, and you get a taste of the playoffs. I've got a couple other buddies that also work in the MLB as strength coaches, and they told me, is like once you taste the playoffs, the regular season is almost like a little bit of a letdown, which is funny to think about because you're in the major league at the highest level, going to all these different cities and stadiums every day, and it's true. Like, it's still a cool atmosphere, but it's a completely different animal in the playoffs, and fun's an understatement. It's incredible.
Well, and so that's been a journey for you, and we're going to kind of talk about how Yankton has helped shape that and the role it played. But I always like to ask some icebreakers. I always like to ask some questions. They are they are nonsensical. They are low-hanging fruit. Nothing that's going to get you in trouble. But you still willing to answer a few?
Absolutely.
All right. And this one for you, I think, especially in the fitness industry, strength and conditioning, maybe you might have two different answers. I'm actually going to frame it that way. But a go-to meal. What's your go-to meal when you're going to be working out, anything like that? And what would be your go-to meal if you knew it was your final one?
Well, I'm going to go with the final one because that's the best one. For me, it's going to be a just huge, fat Detroit-style pizza. And that's fun. Like, no coincidence. Well, I should say it is a coincidence that Detroit-style pizza is my favorite, and then we moved to Detroit, and it's so good. So I'm going to get the greasiest, biggest, fattest pizza I can for sure if it's last meal. But I try to eat as well as I can. And if I'm going like, hey, I need to eat good, I need to make sure that we're watching what we're doing a little bit, I'm probably going to go somewhere in the realm of, it's kind of a cop-out answer, but like whether it's a chicken, a big old fat like prime steak, or salmon, which I know, again, covers a lot of areas. Like between those three with either some steamed veggies, some kind of rice, whatever, and a big old salad. Like that's my good healthy meal to go to. But if I'm having to pick between the three, it's probably going to be chicken, actually, and then steak.
All right. I like it. I like that. So, excellent. We're off to a good start here. Now, are you a fan of music?
I am.
All right. If you could see any three musical artists from throughout history, so living or dead, live in concert, which three would you choose to see?
I'd probably go, man, this is a very deep question. I'd probably go Eric Clapton for one. I'd probably do like a Stevie Ray Vaughan type person if I could. And shoot, for kicks and giggles, I've seen him a bunch of times, but I love him, probably Eric Church.
All right. Excellent. Well, I love those answers. And Eric Clapton, and I always say, you not only get their solo work, you get their work with the groups that they were in. So that's a bonus then, absolutely. Yeah, you get Derek and the Dominoes, and you get Cream. You get all that with Eric. But man,
I'll take it.
As a solo artist, gosh, I loved him growing up. Just so much good stuff. I mean, whether it's a ballad, a good slow ballad, or something just riffing off the guitar. So excellent choice. Man, that's a good one. All right. Now, for this one, we're talking a little time travel. If you could travel back to any point in the Earth's history and be guaranteed safe return once, to when are you traveling and why?
Any point in history. Oh, man. I think, honestly, the first thing that's coming to my head is back when, I don't even know the exact era, but pyramids, right? Like back Egyptian history of like creation of all of that. I think that would just be super incredible to see how those have been created by essentially just manpower, without all the technology that we have, and how they were able to come together as communities to do that. I think that'd be so cool to see.
All right. I love it. And now I will give you just one more here. And this can have multiple answers because people view it differently. Sometimes there's a professional one. Sometimes it's closer to home. But as you've gone through life, who is someone or are some people that you hold up and say, man, I would love to live my life like him or her because I know I'll be successful. And whatever you're quantifying success, whether it's financial, relational, anything like that.
I would have to go with, it's a broad answer, but I'll narrow it down. Like just all of my family, truly. Like my parents, the situations that we've been through have not always been as quote unquote successful, but they've created success in the long term, right? And everyone that has been included in my life is for a reason, but specifically my dad, just because he was so awesome with everything with me growing up, giving me opportunities, providing it, but also providing me with structure and accountability and, when I needed it, putting me in place, right? So like that to me is success of just making sure that, you're living life the right way. Absolutely.
All right. Well, see, I told you they were nothing real serious, but you did well. So I appreciate you handling the icebreakers. And yeah, you did nice. And so we're going to close up with a few questions here, just kind of bringing it back home. But first, more focusing kind of as an overview. We talked off air, and obviously you're with the Detroit Tigers, and you're working with high-level athletes. But what are some of the challenges of your industry, and what are some of the rewards? Obviously, you and I spoke how sometimes it's the rewarding is the general population getting to work with somebody that goes from not being able to walk hardly because of weight or joints or whatever to working with them to being a high-level functioning individual who. And I'm just going to put it in myself. I told you my daughter was working with me, somebody who can't walk from the parking lot into church to now, and then was taking 5 ibuprofen and 2 acetaminophen 3 times a day to, I didn't take any pain meds for a couple of days.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges, and then what are the rewards that you find?
Yeah, I think the challenges for sure with this specific job that I have is the time requirements, the time away from my family. Obviously, everything is at the highest level, right? So it's top tier hotels. It is premier travel, walking straight on the plane on the tarmac. Everything that you think of when you think of the show, right? Major League being the show. But at the end of the day, it's hotels and it's planes, right? It's being away from my wife, being away from my kids. That puts a ton of stress on them, and that's really, really hard. I think a lot of people can always say, "Oh, well, you're in the big leagues, like." You're working with these $1 million athletes, and I'm not one of those $1 million athletes, right? Like that money helps with that for them, but we as staff are not even close to that. So that definitely takes a toll. Like it's very, very challenging in that regard. And one other big challenge of the major leagues is because you are at the top, you're at the tip of the spear in the sport. It's like a fishbowl for sure. So all eyes are on you when it comes to your front office, when it comes to people outside. Every decision you make has to have reason, and you need to know what you're doing. So it's a very challenging job in that regard because, a couple slip-ups, like we could seriously change the trajectory of season if we do something stupid with these guys' performance and their training. So we have to be very, very cognizant of what we're doing in that regard. But the flip side of it, the rewards, it's the show. It's the big league. It's everything I mentioned before. It's all of that stuff kind of laid out on a platter for you. When you're on the road, when you're at home, the facilities are incredible. We'll have the highest level of athletes that you're working with, highest level of coworkers. But to your point as well, you don't forget about the Gen Pop people that I've worked with along the way, the youth athletes that I've worked with along the way that have truly been more rewarding and more challenging to train some of them sometimes and created, the coach that I am today. I would not be the same if I just worked with NFL and MLB athletes every single day for my whole career. I would not be very good, to be honest with you, because these guys are the best compensators in the world, and they can get away with it, and you're just like, yep, see what I did? This guy's so good, but in fact, it's really just them, right? But so that definitely has shaped my career and been a huge reward. And then just the travel, like it's a positive and a negative. Like I get to go to a lot of cities and a lot of places that I never would have even thought of doing before, especially growing up in small town South Dakota. It's like I've been all over the United States and international a little bit too with our Dominican teams and whatnot. But that's a huge life benefit for me for sure, just to get a little unsheltered.
All right. Actually, something you just said sparked a question in my head. So obviously, we know the baseball season and we know spring training. Do you have an off season? I mean, like because you just talked about with your Dominican teams, do you work then during winter ball and stuff like that? Do you have to travel for that?
So it's a really good question because a lot of people don't think about it. You always think, oh, it's the off season, they're not doing anything. As the strength and conditioning department, we are like, that's the time when we can have the biggest impact is the off season. Hard part is a lot of the players go home, right? They go back to where they're from. They train with their trainers at home. Some of them, a good amount of them will program from them remotely. But it's a little different at the big league level than it is at the minor league level because just sheer quantity of people, right? At the minor league level, there's 200 plus players. You're having to keep track of all those guys. You're doing strength camps. You're doing all of this developmental work instructionally at the complex. In the major leagues, it's a little bit less of that just because my primary focus is the 26-man rosters, the guys in the big leagues, and then to a degree some of the 40-man guys as well. But so yes and no. It's definitely way less than 7 days a week during the season, but we still are doing a lot when it comes to training people. And there's some guys that stay in Detroit, not as many. There's a couple, but there's a lot of people down in Lakeland. We're doing a ton of continuing education stuff for us, for our staff, the minor league strength conditioning staff. We're still overseeing all of them too. So it definitely, you don't shut off, but you try and shut off as much as you can because if you've ever been in any sort of long-term baseball season, it is crazy. It is a lot, and it wears you down for sure.
Well, I'm just going to tell you, as a Twins fan, the regular season wears me down, so I can't even imagine what it's like to actually work in the industry. And I hate to do this. You actually brought up something else that triggered a question for me. Sure. So players work with their own trainers. Obviously not – you guys aren't uniform in how you think. Different trainers think different things and different exercises. How does that coalesce at times? I mean, how does that conflict, and how does that coalesce to work together?
It's again, a lot of effort on our part, right? So I've got a unique perspective because I've been on both sides of that now. I've been in the baseball world with my guys, sending them out to players, and then I've also been the guy that they're sending them out to. So I think I have a good perspective on it. My thought was always, as the strength coach, the personal strength coach, right, the non-team affiliated strength coach, I was always in communication with the strength coaches of the organization to ensure that I'm training them to the performance increments that they're looking for, right? At the end of the day, training is training. Like, you're going to do similar things, but you can go very in-depth with the way that guys get these things done, right? Just the way that they orient themselves in space, the way that their movement patterns happen, the way your anatomy is actually changes the way you and I jump, right? I could be a faster, shallower, loaded squat jump guy. You could be a guy that's really deep and uses a lot more muscle force to try and create your jump. So long story short, it's just a lot of communication with those coaches, and it's a lot of us going through a lot of their programs and honestly nitpicking it apart and being like, from the beginning, saying, hey, like, we're not dogging on anything that you're doing unless obviously it's very poor. But we do it in a professional manner so that we can get the goals that we have for all these players are set from the beginning, and we give those to them, and we kind of guide them working toward it. And then we'll get hands-on touches where I'll fly to see a handful of players at a time, whether it's out to Arizona for 3 days. I went to Texas last year to see a chunk of our guys, Georgia, Florida, all these places, So again, that's more travel and that's more time spent working in the off season. It's just another part of the job.
All right. Well, that is interesting. Well, as I mentioned, the one last thing I wanted to just touch on, just because it is a Yankton question, just kind of what did growing up in Yankton, you've talked about small town South Dakota a few different times. What did your upbringing here, whether it was in school, out of school, in sports, off season, how has that helped shape who you are, what you appreciate, and how you've developed?
Yeah, it's been a humongous part of my development just as a person because, like I mentioned, I've been to a lot of places now, and I've seen these big cities. I've seen some smaller towns, and our town is very unique in the sense of our community. Feels like a family. You get a ton of support. Like the fact that you and I are talking right now just proves it, right? Like you guys care about where people that are from Yankton go and what they do, and I always think about that, and I love coming back home. So that community and family support, you don't see that everywhere. You don't get that, and I think that's super unique to our community and the people. It says a lot about our people there. I have a ton of teachers and coaches that shaped me into who I am, and that's just it's awesome. Truly, it's super unique, and it just created a lot of hard-working values that I have, and I think have contributed to my success thus far.
All right. Well, Drew, I have taken up enough of your time. I really appreciate you joining me, though. And, obviously my Twins are out of it. I know they could win the rest of the season and they're not officially eliminated, but we both know it's over. So I am a Tigers fan, and I always liked the Tigers growing up. I liked Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, so I grew up liking the Tigers. And it feels like every time there's success, because the city did have such a down time there, it's always nice to see the Lions be successful. It's nice to see the Tigers be successful. So I'm rooting you guys on. It's been so fun to talk with you. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the tidbits you gave me off the air to pass on to my daughter because, like I said, you're doing kind of what she eventually hopes to be in, is in the industry at the very least. And so thank you so much for that and taking the time to talk to me today. Really,
Absolutely.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you too. And tell everybody at home hi for me. Miss everybody.
Will do. You have yourself a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your season, and enjoy the time off that you do get, okay?
Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.
That was Drew Heithoff, strength and conditioning coach for the Detroit Tigers, Yankton alum. Just really wanted to get him on the air, and so excited for that. And if you have somebody that you know from Yankton or this area who's doing something cool like that and just a success, let me know. I would love to highlight them. So thank you to Drew for taking the time. And off the air, we talked a little bit beforehand. Just as you know, my daughter Leela is in the industry, and she's 22, so she's working her way up. Obviously, she's 22; she wants it all now. But he had some great tips, and so want to thank him for that. And that's what we do here in the plains, the Great Plains, whatever it might be. We help each other out, and so. Best of luck to Drew. Best of luck to the Detroit Tigers. And that was a Bucks Banter. And if you'd like to sponsor Bucks Banter, you give us a call, 605-665-2600. All right, we'll be back with more. This is At the Mic with Michael Schumacher, brought to you by JR's Oasis. More than a fuel station, more than a convenience store. It is your one-stop travel shop on ESPN Radio, 101.5 FM, 1570 AM, KVTK, Vermilion, and Yankton.